Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams and the last song, that's going out to Peyton again. I saw the video that was posted this week. You know, it can be fun being in this position, but it also brings a lot of idiots. And we've seen more than a few idiots over the duration of the show. It seems to be there's more than one particular group that was close to us previous than others, and that gets frustrating. You know, whilst we post facts, they post bullshit, and people too often read the headline and don't look into the details. I'm going to cover some of that later. And then along comes a video. I did a request to Peyton, member of Beth Dalton's family, a few months ago, I think it was. I can't remember now. And the joy on that kid's face, because I mentioned her name and played her song. You know, this is why we do this. For those little moments where you can make a difference. It's always nicer when you can make a difference to a number of people, but if you make a difference to one, and we all make a difference to one, then quite quickly we can change the world in an instant. You know, people often say, oh, I can't do much, I'm old, or I'm disabled, or I can't do this and I can't do that. But you can go and please somebody else. Go and speak to a homeless person. Maybe no one's spoken to them for months. And that video brought a lot of joy to me and a few tears, I must say, because, as I say, the joy on that kid's face kind of reminds me why we keep going with this, despite all the clowns, goons, idiots, never will be's, and the liars and deceivers that we have around the world, and also in our alternative community. And it's sad, but you know, we have to create a better world for the children. I keep mentioning that figure, and people I know pull faces and grimace at it. But another 350,000 children died or went missing permanently since the last show. And when you see the smile on Peyton's face, playing her song, that's why we have to keep going. And that's why we have to shut down the goons in the alternative media who are playing games and throwing mud. None of it sticks. But it just creates more drama and distraction and confusion that we could best do without, given the overall goal that we are seeking. And maybe those people really need to quit alternative media, either do something useful with your life and not just focus on drama or dragging people down, or just quit. Go back to the sheep. You might as well do. Rather than attacking and playing games and the drama with people who are actually trying to do something. There's no guarantee we will succeed. None of us. Whoever is doing what, when, where or why. But at least we're trying, rather than just throwing mud and hating on people. You might as well go and be a cabal member. Let's do that. So that song was for Peyton. And I hope she liked it again. Right, let's get into the details of the show. The link for the show is www.spreaker.com/user/895-5881. And we have a YouTube channel, Tommy Williams, that generally gets posted on Friday or Saturday. And also the articles and all the archives of all the shows, including the live one. You can click on the link for the live one called thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. And there's a load of articles on self-empowerment and all kinds on there. So it's getting a lot of traffic now, which is good. We have the Facebook page, Truth, Honour and Integrity, and the Facebook social media alternative called MeWe.com, and you can find the links that I'm reading out on the top of the Facebook page, the pin post, all on Think Different. So some people struggle to get on MeWe, or you can send an email and I can add you to MeWe from there. And the email is also for questions or comments about the show is truth.honour.and.integrity@gmail.com. We also have the People's Club donations website link and everything that's going to happen with the People's Club Foundation, and that's at thepeoplesclub.org. Right, let's get into the show. We have some fairly heavy intel tonight. Not a vast amount of it, but it's something that will surprise a few. The clans are coming up with all kinds of schemes to try and stall and stifle and block and everything. It won't work, but you know how they are. So there's some positive news in the intel. And we've got the usual op-ed pieces. There's a number of good bits in that as well. But first, we're going to cover some of the fake news. Is it fake? You just don't know what's fake, what's not, and anymore. But here we go. Last week, the Senate left hundreds of thousands of dreamers. Interesting term they call that. And the immigrants in limbo after rejecting rival plans that would have spared them from deportation and strengthened the nation's border security. The senators dealt President Donald Trump an especially galling defeat, as more than a quarter of fellow Republicans abandoned him on this particular issue, and that helped propel him to the White House. Also defeated in the Senate was a plan by a bipartisan group of senators who offered a compromise that would have shielded the young immigrants and also financed Mr. Trump's demands for money to build his coveted border wall with Mexico, though a lot more slowly than he wished. 8 Republicans joined most Democrats in backing that plan, but it fell short after the White House threatened a veto and the GOP leaders opposed it. And the day's vote, in which 4 separate proposals were all defeated, has now illustrated a new Congress steep challenge in striking a deal on an issue that's proven intractable for years and on which each party's most fervent supporters refuse to budge. So this is suggesting that this will go on and on and on and on and on. And, you know, it's people's lives they're messing about with, playing alleged party politics. You know, and I know there's people who don't want illegals or immigrants in this country. I've made my stance quite clear on that, and I won't be changing, because you can't be illegal on your own planet. There is elements, you know, there's good and bad elements for people that come in. There's also what is often overlooked is a number of those people that were brought in at the behest of certain agencies in this country to do with drug wars. And that must not be forgotten, and you can't blame the kids for that, and shouldn't do either. You need to go back to the source of the problem. They're the ones that flooded Mexican drug lords into California and Texas, and also armed them. Hello, Mr. holder, these people are still to be held accountable for. The White House on energy and environment as a member of the National Economic Council comes amid growing criticism of a slew of senior officials working in the Trump administration who are working with no permanent security clearance. Perhaps they need to get the TSA in to fondle them. And Banks told Politico that the White House Counsel Office said Tuesday that he would not receive permanent clearance, but he admitted to smoking pot 5 years ago, really. And the White House subsequently accepted his offer of resignation. Really. I'm not fond of pot, and again I've made my position quite clear on that. I do recognise, before people jump down my throat, that it has medicinal purposes, but the damage of pot, smoking it at least, is fairly decisive in my opinion, but it shouldn't prevent people doing a job, providing it's not current. If you're smoking it in the White House, I can understand that possibly being an issue. But this is 2013. It's like the guy last week, was it Porter, who's had to step down because his wife alleged that he abused her back in 2005. How far are you going to go back? And if that's the case, one must question the background checks. Again, people will blame the front people, but overlook the issue is why aren't these people who are screened for these jobs properly? And if they have missed something, why don't heads roll ever? If you're putting somebody in one of the most prominent places on the planet politically, if not then surely security and background checks are a must before they even go in. Yet again, incompetence at best. Another one that's gone, a senior aide to Jared Kushner is leaving the White House. Perhaps he talked too much, maybe. Who knows? To return to his family real estate company, apparently. Reed Cordish is a central figure in the Kushner-led Office of American Innovation, and Cordish will be replaced by Brooke Rollins, a former aide to Texas ex-Governor Rick Perry, who heads the Texas Public Policy Foundation on prison reform. So, musical chairs again. The Environmental Protection Agency Administrator this week, Scott Pruitt, and his staffers have been dragged over the coals after billing taxpayers nearly $200,000 for trips over a 6-month period last year, including 10 visits to Pruitt's former home in Tulsa. According to the travel vouchers obtained by an environmental organisation, Pruitt is one of several Trump administration officials who have drawn attention over travel costs, including Pruitt's frequent travel at first-class rates. Mr. Pruitt earlier this week said a toxic environment politically required first-class travel and protection from his 24-hour security detail. I'm sure there's a lot of taxpayers who would like that to be afforded to them as well. And the Environmental Integrity Project obtained the travel vouchers which covers trips by Pruitt and 14 of his staffers through open record requests. So he's in trouble. And it's nice to see, in some ways, accountability. Justice Department Special Counsel announced on Friday the indictment of a notorious Russian troll farm. Ooh. Oh dear. Charging 13 individuals, nice number, with an audacious scheme to criminally interfere in the 2016 US presidential election. And the Internet Research Agency, which is based in St. Petersburg, Russia, was named as in the indictment as the hub of an ambitious effort to trick Americans into following Russian-fed propaganda that pushed US voters towards the then Republican candidate Donald Trump and away from the Democrat android, also known as Hillary Clinton, or formerly known as Hillary Clinton anyway. The indictment charges that some of the Russian suspects interacted with Americans associated with the Trump campaign, but those associates did not realize they were being manipulated. Yeah. Well, so 13 Russian trolls all altered the American election, did they? 13 trolls. And do you expect us to believe that? Well, seeing as they're going that far into investigations, I'm sure we'll expect around 3,000 to 4,000 indictments of Langley, given they have been directly involved in 61 countries' elections since World War II. You know, if you're going to charge one group, you have to charge both. Can't be selective now, can we? You know, the reality is the CIA is the ultimate troll farm, along with elements in the FBI. And we also have to remember that Corey Goode was one of the troll trainers for the FBI. Vatican City next. I've got news on them later. They may not like it. The former US ambassador to the Holy See, Mary Ann Glendon, has resigned from the board of the Vatican in the latest vote of no confidence in the bank's efforts to turn itself around. It can't. It has no funds. The Institute for Religious Work said Friday that Glendon was leaving to devote more time to other Catholic causes. What? Child trafficking? Sorry. But her departure follows the still unexplained firing of the bank's respected deputy manager, Giulio Mattietti. And Vatican officials have been unusually quiet about the mysterious dismissal. No change there. As well as reports of internal dissatisfaction with the remaining bank management. Glendon, a Harvard University law professor, has been US ambassador to the Holy See from 2007 through 2009, and joined the board of the IOR as it worked to clean up its decades millennia long reputation for scandal and mismanagement. Maybe that's why Ms. Von Reitz has fled. Who knows? A Russian MP, Vladislav Reznik, and 17 other suspects have gone on trial in Madrid accused of massive money laundering for a Russian mafia gang. Good stuff. We're going to see a lot more of this. This particular news item is like an episode of The Blacklist that I suggested people should follow. You may get pointers in there. And the alleged gang bosses, Gennady Petrov and Alexander Milashev, are still at large, believed to be in Russia. and some suspects are alleged to have Russian government connections. They always allege that. Mr. Resnick told the court that he turned up in order to prove his innocence, and 5 Spaniards are also in the dock accused of helping the Russian criminals. And these particular cases date back to 2008, when Spanish police carried out Operation Troika and arresting 20 Russian mafia suspects. Mr. Resnick, whose wife Diana Jinden is also on trial, previously chaired the Russian Parliament's Financial Markets Committee. He's also a member of the United Russia Party, who is loyal to Vladimir Putin. So the mafia is being taken down also. You'll find that most mafias are run at the behest of the Vatican. The Italian one is. Canadian Prime Minister, well, we've had a few questions about him. It seems he's not as popular as he thought he was. On a trip to what is his first official visit to India, was not the headline-grabbing love fest that he had become accustomed to on other overseas trips. And despite plenty of photo opportunities, including at the Taj Mahal, Mr. Trudeau and his family tour has largely been ignored by senior members of the Indian government so far. When he arrived in the capital in Delhi, he was met at the airport by a junior minister in what many interpreted to be a snub. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has on many occasions personally received visiting government leaders, and he also famously hugs his foreign counterparts, but this time 3 days in and the Prime Minister hasn't bothered. Maybe that's a message to Mr. Trudeau. Next blacklist style arrests, and the head of Latvia's central bank has been released from police custody on bail as investigators seek to determine whether or not he solicited a bribe. The country's anti-corruption agency says Ilmaz Rimcevic sought a payment of at least €100,000, which is about $124,000, and he was arrested and questioned on Saturday at his home, and officers were searched. The Bank of Latvia says it has zero tolerance policy towards corruption. A bank, oh, really? And was cooperating with investigators. And the anti-corruption agency said the criminal investigation is not related to money laundering accusations, which is also levelled against the country's third largest bank, ABLV, by the US Treasury. More to that story than you realise. Where are we next? How are we for time? We're okay. 4 more. Right. As I have previously warned several times on this show, Mr. Kushner will eventually come under the scrutiny. And it appears now Special Counsel Robert Mueller's interest in Jared Kushner has kind of expanded beyond his contacts with Russia and is now including his efforts to secure financing for his company from foreign investors during the presidential transition. Oops. And this is the first indication that Mueller is exploring Kushner's discussions with potential non-Russian foreign investors, including in China. US officials briefed on the probe back in May at points of focus related to Kushner, the White House senior advisor and son-in-law of President Donald Trump, including the Trump's campaign's 2016 data analytics operation and his relationship with former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, and also Kushner's own contacts with Russians. Mueller's investigators have been asking questions, including during interviews in January and February, about Kushner's conversations during the transition to shore up financing for 666 Fifth Avenue, which is a Kushner Company's backed New York City office building, which is reeling from financial troubles, according to people familiar with the special counsel investigation. So Mr. Kushner's finance, as well as his links with Russia, which may or not be relevant, is now under investigation. Perhaps they'll go a bit further and find out he has special interests in other countries, particularly one. Where are we next? The UN, the non-sovereign UN. A dossier was released this week further evidence. We had the Oxfam one last week, and this is about it was released by a former senior United Nations official, and it reveals that United Nations employees have carried out over 60,000 rapes in the last decade. What's more, the dossier estimates that the organisation currently employs at least 3,300 pedophiles. Unbelievable. In just 10 years, under the guise of rendering aid, we don't need their type of aid, the United Nations has literally been raping and pillaging countries across the world. And the problem has gotten so out of hand, it prompted the former UN insider Andrew MacLeod to blow the whistle and hand over the evidence to Britain's Department of International Development Secretary, Mr. Patel, who, not surprisingly, decided to resign last November. Wonder why. According to the exclusive report, the dossier reveals on top of the 3,300 pedophiles working for the organisation, thousands more predatory sex abusers specifically target aid charity jobs to get close to vulnerable women and children. And according to MacLeod, anyone who's attempted to blow the whistle on what is now horrifyingly rampant abuse is silenced and fired. Now, the Free Thought Project has been reporting this for years, and none of these predators were ever held liable. And as this report shows, only the ones who expose it are fired. Sounds familiar with the American politics. And in a blow to victims of human trafficking worldwide, a massive child sex ring was also exposed in Haiti, go figure, involving international peacekeepers, in rather large inverted commas, peacekeepers my ass, with the United Nations as well as other high-level officials from around the world. Yeah, like Clinton Foundation. Oops. And yet again, no one went to jail. For years, the UN peacekeepers, their high-level commanders, and other personnel from around the globe came to Haiti for sex with boys and girls as young as 12. In Haiti alone, more than 300 children have come forward in the last decade with these claims, and only a tiny fraction of those accused have ever faced any form of accountability. And this is the organisation that governments of the world rely on to keep peace. I don't think so. And you wonder why we're in a perpetual state of war. Well, as nations get raped and pillaged and bombed and blitzed, that then splits up families. This has been happening in Syria, and the predators step in. It's a deliberate program. So the parents, remember all the boats that were going out of Syria and Lebanon, and you're putting parents on one boat and the kids on another. Now you know why. and this is what we have to keep going, and cut out the stupidity of some of the clowns in the alternative media, because there's far more things to focus on, whether you like me or not. San Francisco next. A group of Silicon Valley technologists who are early employees of Facebook and Google are alarmed over the ill effects of social networks and smartphones. Really? They're kind of slow, aren't they? Anyway, they're banding together now to challenge the companies they help build. I'm all for that. The cohort is creating a union of concerned experts called the Center for Humane Technology. Along with the non-profit media watchdog group Common Sense Media, it plans an anti-tech addiction lobbying effort and an ad campaign at 55,000 public schools in the United States. The campaign, titled The Truth About Tech, will be funded with $7 million from Common Sense and capital raised by the Center for Humane Technology. And Common Sense also has $50 million in donated media and airtime from partners including Comcast and DirecTV. And it will all be aimed at educating students, parents and teachers about the dangers of technology, including the depression that can come from heavy use of social media. That's something to be applauded. Someone who was on the wrong path and decided to do something better. You know, I would like those people, maybe if we can get the funds fairly soon to speak to those people. Because maybe we can create a platform, which I mentioned a couple of shows back, where we can delete Facebook altogether, delete Google altogether, delete Microsoft altogether, and delete NSA, TSA, CIA, and all the other three-letter clowns off our internet. We don't need this vast amount of spyware. That's nothing to do with protecting America and everything to do with protecting global elites. Period. I would like to see these people build a platform, and also like the people to go out and buy. And hopefully you can make the computers cheaper without all Google software and Microsoft software and all the spy software that's got to be added to it. Surely we can cut the price of computers and go forward with them. Maybe it's something the trust can fund, where we give reconditioned tablets or phones to the kids, minus all the programs. You know, maybe they can, like the, what's that thing that does the virus on a little stick, so you can delete the original program off your computer and install the non-spyware, non-Google, non-Microsoft, non-Facebook with another stick. So you don't, it's not a case of having to go and buy a new computer. So hopefully that's something they will think about. I couldn't believe it when I watched this the other morning. I was testing the TVs in a vacation home before the next guest arrives, and the local news was on, and the TSA, you know, the sexual perverts in the airport, citing high level of anxiety because suddenly Orlando Airport recommended this week ousting the TSA's federal and unionised security screeners in favour of a privately employed staff. Oops. And according to the airport chairman, the change is needed because security waits are too long. TSA officials, however, assert that delays are from choke points in the terminal's antiquated design that constrict the flow of travellers. That's complete BS. Sorry, it just is. Frank Kruppenbacher, the airport chairman, says, "I'm not going to debate this issue in the media, since the ability for media to accurately convey the facts seem to be all but impossible." Hear, hear. I give that airport chairman a medal, because that's what we've been saying for numbers of years. So he's not prepared to debate it in the media, because the media will spin it, as we all know. So it seems like people are catching on. But here's the kicker. Because most people in America will miss the fact that the TSA is a private contractor. They're not American. NSA, DHS, CIA, IRS, NASA. They're not American companies. They're not under American jurisdiction, or have little or no congressional oversight. So the TSA can spout fear all they like about privately employed staff, but the TSA is a privately employed contractor with no oversight. Because surely if they did, they wouldn't allow them to fiddle with kids in the airport. So the TSA fear porn moaning, potentially for it to be a security issue over a private contractor, to me is a moot point. So the perverts at the airport can take a flying, pardon the pun, leap for me, because I believe I can fly without having my genitals fondled at the airport. Hi all and welcome back. So apparently they decided to cut us off. Well, apparently we'll decide to repeat what I said. The part of the issue to do with the wall, because I'm not in favour of any walls. They've never solved anything, and it's more about protecting certain special groups than anything else. It's applied in Germany, applies in Israel, same people. But some of the issues that have been going on in down at the border of child trafficking, organ harvesting, and a plethora of drugs and gang warfare that have been employed, to my knowledge, at the behest of certain agencies in this country. Now, remember there was thousands of children that came in on trains about 12, 14, 15 months ago, and they went to Texas. Where are they now? Well, disappeared. So, part of the issues of the wall is to stop this trafficking. Now, to me, I think we should just put the military a few posts every mile or so and bring the troops home, and we don't need to have a wall as such. We could just have troops defending this country. But, you know, the hypocrisy of the more Democrats, than Republican, but they're both just as bad. Of let's take the guns off Americans. When Eric Holder launched Operation Fast and Furious and gave Mexican drug gangs a plethora of heavy-hitting guns, some of which killed American border guards. So it's this imbalance where one group's doing one thing and the same group can't do the same thing. One person gets pulled up for not being truthful, and another group of people just carry on with impunity. Holder authorized American heavy guns to MS-13 and other Mexican drug gangs. Has he been held accountable? No. And therein lies the problem that we face. Until everyone is treated the same, please don't be telling Americans to give up their guns when you're giving guns to criminals who can shoot at them. So I hope that covered what you missed in the first hour. Right, let's get into some intel. We've got a whole heap of op-ed pieces. Played the land of confusion because you're going to get confused shortly. Right. The first is, I don't think this will go ahead, but I'm giving people a further warning, is the potential for a financial meltdown. Because we can't react after the fact. We have to be proactive before. Now, this bill they keep putting in about the immigrants along with the budget means certain portions of it can't go ahead. This is how they meddle in the world of politics. They do it every time. They add something into it that's going to cause an issue for it to be blocked, and so it gets kicked down the road. Except, come March the 31st, there is no kicking down the road. The reality is, nobody, and I mean nobody, has got any liquidity in the accounts. Whether that's Chinese elders, whether that's Rothschilds, whether that's American banks, British banks, Australian banks, African banks, or central banks, or Federal Reserve. None. Remember me saying December the 21st, nothing will be the same going forward. It won't. Because that's when all the banks found out that the mirrored accounts that Kim explained on the last show last week all went down. All the banks thought they had X number of billions in, only to find when the mirror accounts was dropped, they were billions in the red, all of them. And so the problem they, and ultimately we, face is that they have to come to the table. There's plenty of funds for everybody as long as people do it in a more fair and transparent manner. But these clowns just carry on. So everyone's in debt. And the question is, who's it owed to? Well, as we found out, the majority of it is owed back to the trust. Now, the trust also has a lot of pledges for all 209 countries, dividends for all 209 countries, and funds for the people of 209 countries. But until these clowns quit or are removed, then those funds are going to be held in abeyance. Sad for us all, but this is what we're facing. Now, people often say, well, it's not possible that X, Y, or Z can't have any funds. Well, it is. If people who remember me mentioning this going back 2.5 years ago, roughly, in Cosmic Voice, where I said there's only one pot of money left, and all they're doing is, you have it this week, we'll have it next week, and it makes it look like everyone's got money when in reality there isn't. So under the current financial system, which is a giant Ponzi scheme and is reliant on increased debt to keep going, with the debts being paid down, that system collapses. And I'll give you a basic example. Customer A comes in and pays $100 for, say, gas. The collector takes the $100, puts it in his pocket. Then customer B and C comes in and buys $150 worth of gas. Now, the collector could put another $50 in his pocket, and the 100 pays customer A. And so on it goes. Well, if you're doing that on a scale of 209 countries, and you're relying on the next layer of the pyramid to keep paying what the previous layer have already paid, eventually, unless you keep increasing the debt and increase the flow of funds coming in to create the next layer to pay the next layer down, eventually that upside down pyramid collapses. And basically that's what's happened over the last 10 years, because there's no more borrowing or stealing from the trust to create the next layer of the pyramid or Ponzi scheme. This is what the guy, was it Maddox or something like that, why he got sent to jail. But that's basically what the world central banks and Federal Reserve have been doing. They've been looting out of every account, Social Security, pensions, you name it, to keep the next layer floating. But if the next layer of debt doesn't come forward, then they are stuck with all the funds that they have been losing out of the system. So suddenly customer F, G and H says, I've already paid that bill. Well, I, J and K, customer didn't come in because they've got no money. And that's kind of where we're at. And the budget was set, kicked down the road to March the 23rd for a reason. That gives roughly a week to sort something out, because it's not just America that's bankrupt. All 209 countries are bankrupt. All the central banks are bankrupt. All the individual banks are bankrupt. So they have a solution to go forward with the trust. And more, as you will get when I go through further down in the internet, more and more I'm starting to see it like what it is, the only solution. And despite certain factions, one of which was mentioned last week, trying to put the blocks on it, eventually they'll put the blocks on everyone. Because there's literally nothing to put in the system anymore. So you can't keep kicking the can down the road. They've been using military credits since November of 16. Well, the military credits have run out. There's nothing left. And it's now clear to most people with an ounce of common sense that the Rothschilds and the Chinese elders have nothing to offer. They never did. So this is the issue we're facing between now and the end of March. What I would say to people is have money in hand. Keep it in hand. Whilst you have cash, you are in control of your own destiny. Because if the worst does come to the worst, and I don't expect it will, but it is possible, don't count on getting your money back. Because they don't have any to replace it. Nothing. You see, the new system, what was explained by Kim last week, and myself in previous shows, is not a debt-based system. So, a debt-based system is Ponzi. That's where it allows fiat currencies and bogus cryptocurrencies and all kinds of other nonsense. But the new financial system requires you show assets. And they've pledged them to the trust to leverage more money to pay off the Ponzi scheme, to keep in the game. So in essence, over the last 10 years, they've been in a financial stranglehold. And so's the world economy, despite the rubbish that you see on the mainstream media. The markets are going through the roof. It's all an illusion. Anyone who thinks they can read public markets and think that's the real world, think again. It's not. It's the off-ledger accounts that tell you the real banking system and the real world of finance. It's all an illusion. All that markets, NASDAQ, FTSE, and all that rubbish. Like I said, even for people who are not financially competent in that field, myself included, how when the Fortune 500 companies are all collapsing, closing all kinds of shops down and sieving workers at a quite frankly an alarming rate, and yet the market triples. They're the main 500 companies that drive the markets. Well, they're all in financial meltdown. That's why they're letting the shops and staff go, or basically going out of business, like Sears, Target. Doesn't make sense, does it? So if it doesn't make sense, it's all an illusion. So I'm asking people to keep hold of cash, be it 1 week, be it 2 weeks, be it a month. You never know. Because, people say, well, you've got the insurance, they'll support it. Rubbish. They're bankrupt as well. They've been looted. They were bankrupt back in 2008 because they couldn't pay the debts then. So don't be relying on so-called banking insurance. They're part of the problem. So have cash, please. And just because the days pass doesn't mean to say, oh, well, that hasn't happened this week, so I'll put it back in. It can literally go like that any day between now and the end of March. The whole thing could crash around our ears. And it's not just America. Because if America goes down, so does everybody else, because 85% of world trade is done with the dollar. So the dollar collapses, and so does the economy, so does everybody else's economy. Don't take chances anymore. I would advise to keep a week if you can, 2 weeks better, a month even better, permanently, until we officially step away from the cabal altogether. Because with the way these idiots operate, they can just turn it in a day. And you arrive home and it's all over the portal, people spilling out, oh, the banks are gone down, and next minute all the bank doors are shut. Because that's exactly what they want. What they don't want is bank runs, because then people will find out very quickly that they don't have the funds to give out what's in the accounts even. Be careful. It's just a heads up. It's not fearborn, and like I said, I don't expect it will happen, but there's always a possibility. Right. There's been a minor delay in the moving forward with the sovereignty. The sovereignty, I want to make it quite clear, is already done. It just has to be implemented. And there's a lot of to and fro going on, a lot of high-level meetings globally, because the impact of America being sovereign impacts on other countries as well. So one of the issues is the military hardware that we gave out as intel a few months back, where the American USA Inc. military, who are struggling for funds, did a deal to sell all of the military hardware to the Chinese elders stroke Rothschilds stroke private entity group. And under the conditions of that deal, all the military hardware, we would keep it, or the American military, or the USA Inc. military, not the American military, would keep the hardware under a lease. Well, of course, now sovereignty has been declared, they're asking for all their hardware, which is going to cause, and has caused, a major global issue. But work is underway, and I can say we now have the full backing, support and assistance from the Chinese PM, Mr. Z. And so a solution to that particular problem is a lot nearer to the conclusion. There's a private entity involved in that, which is causing major concerns of all the governments around the world, that someone private can have all that military hardware and not be assigned to a country. So it's rather delicate, but talks are going well, and now we've got the full support and assistance from the Chinese PM. That particular item should be resolved fairly soon. And here's something that you will not be aware of. Neither was I until today. But if you think it's just the Chinese elders and the Rothschilds who owns the USA Inc. military, you need to think again. They don't. And so in this week steps the next faction to make the claim on the USA Inc. military, the Jesuits. They're trying to enact a law from 1488 where they think they totally own our military and are trying to enforce it. And apparently they have some sort of act where they think that they own the Chinese military as well. So this is a two-pronged attack also again. And when you think America was only refounded again in the 1400s by Vatican agent Christopher Columbus, yes, he was paid by the Vatican to go there, but they knew. So quite how they can lay claim from that date is totally beyond me. But this is what the Jesuits and Vatican are up to. Maybe this is another reason why the Vatican attorney, Anna von Reitz, is fleeing the country. That remains to be seen as to why. It could well be the reason. And if it is, and she's operating on behalf of the Vatican, then everything we said last week is 100% correct. She needs to declare what her real intentions are for the people. Not only in the alternative media, but the American people. She talked about getting the money back. She didn't say how she was going to give it back. So, it could be the bank issue, or it could be to do with this issue, where they think they can keep hold of the American and control of the American military, which will subsequently block the American sovereignty plans going forward in a quicker, smoother manner. It won't block the plans totally, but it will stifle a part of it. And the Vatican thinks their current thinking is that military ownership is separate from sovereignty, or so we think anyway. And work is underway to correct this nonsense as we speak. And once this is corrected and the military hardware deal with the Asians is corrected also, American sovereignty should be rubber stamped in some way quite quickly after that. It can go forward and be implemented. And the Jesuits, as for them, they need to understand, and I want to make this quite clear, is the Jesuits are no longer our slave masters. Period. It might have been under the Seswi-KV Act of 1666, except America is no longer under or binding to that act, as the covenant expired. You're not our slave masters anymore. Period. Furthermore, the Jesuits need to grasp they are no longer the powerhouse of anything, and we will remind them they are a sub-sovereign to the trust. Sub-sovereign. Not the other way round. And going forward, it may be the case that the Holy See, Roman Catholic Church, or Vatican, whichever one you wish to call it, will not be declared a sovereign at all. I hope they like that. The trust has the power to declare sovereignty, as proven with the Kingdom of Manna and also America. So by the same token, it has the ability to deny sovereignty as well. Now, people remember one of the conditions of a sovereign is a sovereign nation entity cannot attack another sovereign. And it's quite possible that some may view this stance by the Vatican Holy See as an attack on a sovereign nation, and so an act of war, which then negates them becoming a sovereign entity themselves. Oops. Time will tell. Jesuits need to take note of those last 2 points, and quickly. Work has continued on other fronts, and we've had meetings with the GCHQ this week that have gone really, really, really well. As now, finally, they realise also they've been stiffed by Android and the Rothschilds. Hallelujah, say all. And more importantly, some headway is now being made in the House of Lords in the UK. So that's kind of positive news all round, as the Trust and the team continue to educate the world to the real truth and reality of life here and in the past. And like I've said previously, you would be amazed at how little each of the so-called authority groups know. It's frightening. And yes, some of the claims are so off the wall. You know, there's a lot of people who don't believe in ETs. I get that. So it's like a double whammy. You're telling them not only do they exist, but they've also been raping and pillaging this planet for the last 16,500 years. And they're the real controllers. Oops. Like head explodes. Or that the Rothschilds don't own the whole planet like they seem to think they do. Or the Jesuits think they own all the militaries. That was the old covenant. That covenant has expired and they own nothing. Manor World Holding Trust holds that next banner for the next 500 years. So if the Jesuits want to continue playing games as a non-sovereign for the next 500 years, they really need to come to the table and quickly. That's the intel for this week. It's going rather well. Right, let's get into some op-ed pieces. Another week has gone by, and as stated earlier, it's riddled with what is quite frankly staggering hypocrisy and public waste. $100 million of our public money, imagine where that could have been spent, just to come to the conclusion that Russian trolls interfered or decided the outcome of the last USA Inc. election. $100 million. What about all the waste of money that we're giving all the agencies? What are they actually doing? I thought they were supposed to be protecting America. And we can't work out that allegedly, I might add, some bizarre, unknown Russian troll group interfered with our election. And it took $100 million to find that out. I suggest that we recoup that money by firing all the ones involved. You and I would get fired if we had an oversight of like that in our work. We're talking about a country's election here. And all of that money was spent at the behest of Anne and her democratic collection of criminals. Why? Well, plus there's some fairly obvious foreign interest groups involved in that. Because Anne and her team lost a one-horse race. Oops. Because Anne and her team also signed over all America's future in-ground resources to the UN and certain Russian people. Except when she didn't get in, and this was done before the election, but they were that confident they were going to win. So once she didn't win, those contracts were void. So we have the memo, and vast funds spent to conclude that one politician digs dirt on another. Woo. Like that doesn't happen at state, local or national level ever. It's not news, fake or otherwise. And now we're in election year again. For those that watch TV, will have to endure another plethora of adverts, political, on behalf of this political party, digging dirt on an opposition party. Where did that information come from? The same broken rules as the memo. They all break it. It's not news. And that's why I said it's a load of nonsense. And it won't lead to arrests with the current state everything's in. And it didn't. How much did the memo cost? Another 30 million, 50 million, 130 to 150 million to decide nothing. You know, 100 million, and I think it was Russian trolls. And yet we are told we've got the best military, the best national security, the best spy agencies, and yet none of them spotted alleged Russian trolls. Like I said, perhaps the firings need to be the whole of the national security team. Because clearly they're incompetent. These are the same best this and that groups, according to their story anyway, that also missed all the 9/11 planes. Did anyone get fired for that? No. But someone smokes pot 5 years ago and out the door you go. Someone allegedly abuses his wife 13 years ago and out the door they go. And yeah, 9/11 happened under their watch and Russian trolls allegedly ruined the election. And they all sit there with their fat pensions and fat pay. Time Mr. Trump really cleaned house, methinks. Here's another piece of staggering hypocrisy. Mueller charged attorney Alex van der Zwaan this week for not being truthful. You know, if only that same directive applies to all politicians and agency and the top brass in the military, then we might have a clean house. And if it's not being applied, then the question is, why not? It's unbelievable. Well, this is a preface to a piece I did on, op-ed piece I did the other day on guns. But did you know, a report came out this week, that 40%, 40, of cops admitted they were violent towards their relationship partner. 40%. The same figure admitted violence against their partner in the last 12 months. And if you and your children are in a relationship with a cop, you are 15 times more likely to be violently struck or abused than if you're not. On a recent video I watched by a guy by the name of Brian Young, I think, suggested if this is the case, then where are the background checks on whether the cops should hold guns? Unable to control their tempers or emotions and are walking around with guns? So, of course, this week, I haven't seen it, but I've no doubt this week what dominated on TV, the Florida shooting. Yeah, right. And all about gun laws and gun crimes, etc., etc. But perhaps a little balance is required. Now, I've stated I don't like guns. I come from a country that is not used to seeing guns. But I've also researched about what happened to the people of many countries who gave up their guns. The last 80 million got slaughtered just after it, within a decade of giving up the guns by the authorities who deemed them expendable. Now, no one really knows for real whether people died in the Florida school. But what everyone does know is, yet again, the news reports do not match up to what allegedly happened in the school, as has been reported by more than one people in the school. And the question is, why is that so common? Why are the mainstream media stating a narrative contrary to what the eyewitnesses are saying? And let's not get into why people can't see the difference in that. It's beyond me either, at this point anyway. I understand when you're going back to the Batman shooting or Sandy Hook, but at this point it's beyond comprehension that people can't put two and two together and see it doesn't really match up. Yet again, another drill takes place, and yet again a live event takes place while the drill's just finished or still ongoing. Nobody really knows. These drills are deadly. Of course, I'm being sarcastic. But yet again, another common thing that comes up in these incidents, a repeat narrative, that the shooter was known to the FBI or the authorities. But yet again, the shooter allegedly did what he did. And I guarantee, yet again, no one in the FBI will be held accountable for incompetence. The same thing happened in Vegas. Another drill, another live event, and it was said the FBI knew about him. But he still went ahead and allegedly shot a load of people. And yet again, witnesses came forward and says there was more than one shooter, and yet again the media tells you, no, it was a lone gunman. Well, were the media there? Now, until a proper government is installed, and we're not there yet, we are close, that looks after its people and not other interests, and until the police learn to exercise caution with their weapons and not just shoot unarmed people in wheelchairs, plus many other cases of shoot first, ask questions later, then deny all knowledge, and have corrupt courts getting 99.99% of them off on what is essentially a murder charge. The guy in the wheelchair in the video the other week. Yeah, just blasted them to death. And until all the agencies stop using gangs for their illicit means, be it drugs, trafficking, money laundering, all of which said gangs carry heavy gunfire, some of which was supplied by Operation Fast and Furious, like I mentioned earlier, at the behest of Eric Holder. And until government and agencies stop poisoning the people's minds and bodies with narcotics, opioids and other mind-altering drugs, and until the government, agencies and military stop playing MK Ultra games with people that create Manchurian candidates to commit these gun crimes for an agenda, then my advice to you, every single one of you, is keep your guns at all costs. Keep them locked and loaded. Carry everywhere. Never give them guns up. Because the day you give your guns up is the day we lose this country. The reality is the authorities, as they are called, not authorities at all, in this particular case have to set the tone, because it is they who have created the fear of why people want or need guns to begin with. They have to set the tone. The police have to stop shooting people willy-nilly. The agencies and the military and the governments that are doing MK Ultra mind control games on people, the agencies and some of the government people that are poisoning people's minds with narcotics and opioids, they have to stop it. It will be a glorious day when everyone gives up their guns on this planet. But we're a long way short at the moment. And the first step comes from the so-called authorities. They created it. They have to fix it. And that means cleaning house, and quickly. There's another thing that needs to be fixed. Child protection. There's a misnomer in itself. It's a bit like UN and peacekeepers. Being caught this week and highlighted in one of the Los Angeles Times, which actually published the figures. Child Protection Services was turning children over with such gruesome statistics. And 1,000 convicted sex offenders had been given the green light by the CPS to become approved foster parents just in Los Angeles County alone. 1,000 convicted sex offenders given a green light to become foster parents by the Child Protection Services in one county. Again, it's becoming a common theme, isn't it? At which point does it go beyond being incompetent and into what is basically and essentially organised crime? And again, why haven't heads rolled? Because if anyone who listens to this show was put in that position and they've been convicted of being a sex offender, the authorities, as they like to call themselves, would have been knocking on your door. And yet, I don't see them rushing child protection services and arresting them all. It's hypocrisy on a massive, massive scale, and this is the level of work that needs to be done in this country and others. Next bit, where are we? I'll get to that in a minute. I've often said on this show, people believe me or they don't. It's their choice. But the real question is whether you believe me or not is not the real one. It's whether you believe or trust yourself at the end of the day. I'm irrelevant to what you trust and believe in. And this has become a large part of this show, the psychological side of dealing with the various issues and how we go about things. Now, the common theme for all of us is we all came into this new theatre of operations with a common theme and a common goal. Something just ain't right. And that then was the basis for our truth movement, if that's what you want to call it. What we've been led to believe is not correct on most counts, as we've all found out at various stages of our journey, so to speak, and painfully found out as well. Well, last week's piece on Anna von Reitz needed to be said. She called us frauds and said we were acting fraudulently. The money belongs to the people, she cried. Well, perhaps she's hard of hearing, as that is exactly what we've been stating. A 50% split, which was repeated last Wednesday with Kim and on the show last Wednesday, between the country and the people. Now, the people will get it via a variety of methods, be it big projects, small projects, hand-ups, were all mentioned for the benefit of the people. But there's two issues that come to mind here. Are we as a collective in the right mindset to receive and use the funds wisely? Or will we fritter away with the same competitive mindset that too many too easily display? It's a big problem. Can we fix our own house and then help others do the same? Can we clear up our own traumas, our own hurt, our own pains and damage? All of that is unpleasant in the now. And I do get that. But the festering unpleasantness, many have managed to mask quite admirably over their lives. We lie more to ourselves than we do to other people when you look at it truthfully. That delivers far more pain and damage in the long run, that the mask is and can be seen as the prison cell of your own making. Don't need the cabal to do this and that when you're creating your own prison cell. And this is something we've tried to work on with the group, for those of you new to this show, because we have to be better within ourselves. We can't carry on being the same way. We'll just replicate the same system as the cabal once they're done. So does the child who is picked on at school suddenly turn from victim to the bully, him or herself? The swing from one side to another, that's not the way forward. Surely the better option is the middle path. Neither victim nor bully. This is the third option many of us have forgotten we have. Oh, I never realised that. Well, that's what's called thinking and acting different. The third option. You know, like people say, well, should I vote Trump or should I vote Clinton? You've forgotten the third option. Neither was my answer. The dual choice is often the lesser of two evils that the cabal offer. We have our own choice. We've just forgotten to use it. So they'll say to you in the Matrix, take the blue or red pill. Me, I say, I'm taking neither. Are you left brain or are you right brain? How about both? Why does it always have to be one or the other? And the same applies in the alternative media. And trust me, I've tried to pull people together. Those that know me close know that. And that's despite some of the hit pieces that have been done on this show. But all have bits of a puzzle, and all have had some input into the wider picture. But sadly, some are paid to drive a narrative, and others let their self-importance rule their decision-making. Nothing worse than, to me personally, than people acting under false pretenses. It's another layer of the fakery and illusion we've become all too familiar with, like the banking and the markets. It's all fake, all illusion. Now, I've said before, the show name is not just a fancy title. It is something I myself try to abide by. And ultimately the goal for all of us is we all abide by it, not just me. Where we have a majority of the people acting in truth, honour and integrity. Why would we ever need authority to look after us? Very few people like authority. But if we're not looking after ourselves and not looking after each other, then that's where their role comes in. They decide that we need to be looked after. Now, do I have everything right? No. I have also made mistakes the same as you all. But the key is how you react to them and not the mistakes themselves. The person who never made a mistake is the person who did or never said anything. So, do you castigate yourself for getting something wrong, as many do? Or look back on it and see where it was useful for you and go forward with the positive aspects of that learning curve, the dark lesson. Many people feel I made a mistake being on Drake's show. Many felt I needed my own platform and to discard Drake. Personally, I didn't feel it was necessary, because I was still learning as well. Perhaps learning too well in many cases of how not to be. As evidence too well of those connected to that show have made it all too clear. What I did was trust my own intuition and let nature take its course. If it was meant to be, I was to have my own show. A path will be made. It did, and here we are. It was my time to grow and expand, and hopefully pull others with me on that journey of discovery. And I think we've discovered quite a lot in, 21 months. But that journey of discovery is all about thinking and acting different. We have no option. We can't carry on thinking the same way, and we certainly can't carry on acting the same way. You'll get the same results. And we must do it with a balanced ego. No one putting themselves above others. The old system of hierarchy that has controlled, stifled and abused us for so long. And the key to the change is we all have to change from the old way of acting or thinking into a newer, better, more streamlined way. That has to be the way forward. replicating what has gone on previous will ultimately lead to our demise. I think we're better than that. Although I was going to bring this up twice and I got sidetracked. But there's some people who continue to throw mud and hope things stick. And take, for example, the rip-off reports on Kim that is being spread as proof of her being BS. But if you actually read it, like Anna von Reitz's piece last week, it actually validates. But you'll also note that there's no author on that piece. So no accountability. There's no contact details. And those who made the claims. Again, no accountability. Well, this is classic cabal tactics. Just throw out the headline, knowing most people will not fact check. They'll just see the headline. Man I will trust is BS. For those of you with narrow minds, and we know who's been putting it out this week again. The same goon that tried to discredit last year. As a CV. So the writer of the report, in these reports, stated Kim was falsely claiming to be a sovereign. Oops. That's now proven. Stating she claims to have a large trust account. Oops, that's now proven as well. And the kicker is the banking codes that they claimed was false. And oops again, because that's now been proven as well. But the key is only the cabal and the man of well-told and trust people knew the codes. Do you get the drift now? Of who did it? They didn't like it. Because someone outside of their control took over the trust accounts. I saw these reports 2 years ago. The first week I met up with or connected with the foundation people on Kim, and I inquired about them because I didn't want to be part of having been involved or having been forced to be involved for most of my time in CV with Keenan. I wasn't about to jump in with another one making claims that have no validity. So I did ask 2 years ago about those reports, and I was given a satisfactory reply and ignored them. But Ms. Von Reitz and others in CV are now using it, except if they actually read it. All of what she was being accused of has now been validated. So I'm sorry to disappoint those in CV and Camp Anna, but this is part of a larger problem. The internet is now completely awash with facts being fake and the fake being facts. And the clowns seem to think this is all great fun. And I warned last year that the fake news meme was part of a greater plan to distort your thinking process. And this is what's going on. And it basically leaves you not knowing which way to turn, which one to trust, who to believe, and a state of land of confusion. Who gains by that? Well, it's certainly not the movement, is it? And this is their rather pathetic, in my opinion, to try and upset the balance. They're targeting the alternative media. And it will likely get ugly here on in the alternative media. You know, the TV theatre events are getting more and more exposed, and the actors' roles are being portrayed by, quite frankly, are rank amateurs. The latest, that Hogg guy, who was just happened to be in the same school in California when there was a shooting there. Funny that, isn't it? Well, actually, it's not. Now, this is part of the Sexton Greenberg family. And they have a role in all or most of these theatre TV events. And the problem that the authorities have is now it's becoming more and more obvious for many to see. The same people are turning up every event. Funny that, and they don't get arrested, because they would, to me, to a cop, would be prime suspect. If someone's at the same event, why haven't they been arrested? As a person of at least suspicion. Because they're in on it. Go and check out the Sexton Greenberg family. You'll see them in numbers of these events. That's why they can keep it in-house. It's all part of the same giant family. Elites. So what's going on now is the clowns are doing what they have always done and what they do best. Is as we get nearer to getting out of the maze of the lies and distortion, they move the walls in the maze of confusion. So you don't know what's up or down, left or right. And now they've started deleting many posts, blogs, videos and sites. Because quite frankly, the fake news meme is backfiring in their face. So the resort to last resort is just delete it all. Don't be surprised if the Facebook page goes down. I've been warning it for months. We do have people supporting this show and the pages. Technical people. But these people don't like truth. They like people under their shoe. We're not under anybody's shoe. And it's time that people in the alternative media started seeing through this nonsense. Right, we're going to have a break, and I'm going to come back with one more piece about the alternative media. In fact, no, there's two. I forgot about the other bit of intel. Look for that after the music break. But this is going out to Anna Von Wright. Hi all and welcome back. This next piece, I'm hoping this is my last, because you know, we have more important things to do, but these things by the same particular group causes an internet drama and furore every year. And once I name them and then you remember, you'll see why I need to do this piece, and also highlight why people should pay more attention, because it's been there for everyone to see, but everyone just get caught up in all the drama of what's gone on. And like the staggering hypocrisy that I've mentioned on government levels, and how one group appears accountable and another doesn't. We have the same thing in our alternative media and community, where some groups get heavily promoted and some don't. And what we can do as the community is recognise it. And I'm hoping by doing this piece, people will get a clearer idea of why certain ones I've decided to speak out on, and a lot of others I'm not really that bothered what they say or do. But I kind of feel I've said enough on Anna von Reitz and her collective army of promoted agendas. But a few things did come up during the plethora of words that filled the pages this week and ultimately said nothing. Post after post, to me, is bordering on being a spammer. You know, first of all, it was the trusts don't exist, and then they do. Kim and myself are frauds, and then we're not. Kim isn't a trustee, and then she is. She doesn't have the codes, and then she does. And then the classic statement, yes, the funds will be dished out by the Manor Trust, but all who received it will be accepting stolen goods. I mean, what type of fear porn drivel is that? So that's an awful lot of backtracking and sidetracking that has, quite frankly, it's got more plot lines than a bad soap opera. So now she claims that we claimed we owned the umbrella accounts. Nope, we don't. Kim is the account guardian and custodian of the trust. Does she think for 1 second it all belongs to her? Well, you've all heard it on the show 2 or 3 times now. Does it sound like she's self-important and I own this and I own that? No. You don't need me to tell you that. Only in the cabal world of thinking. It's the cabal and the nobility families who think they own it all. And they have done for many millennia. And now it appears Anna comes under that umbrella, as she calls it, as well, as they and their army of minions wheeled out all the big guns this week to mainly discredit Kim, but me as well. Over the past week, citing the BS rip-off reports, which I've already detailed to you, which they wrote. Only people in the know would know those codes. This is not an ordinary public figure. Oh no. But I think, as last week's show and the comments on last week's show go, we kind of have held our own. Because unlike them, we provided proof and the facts. Not fakery. And whilst to me it's unpleasant, and it's not much fun for her either, the closer scrutiny we got, it ultimately left many more with more clarity, and more than a few more have jumped on board since. So it's backfired on them. So after Anna failed with all the false accusations and assumptions, she then went on about stating Kim and I are promising untold riches. Again, it's either selective memory syndrome, fear porn, or she just doesn't listen properly, or at all. Because the reality is, and I agree with her on this, if you think for one moment that what we are doing is all about the money, I will say it again for the clearly hard of hearing people, you don't understand a single thing of what's going on. Zip. Nada. Money is a control system, and we have on this show highlighted that many, many times. What we see with the trust is a way of improving the 489 aspects of life with the funds, which belongs to the people, and then once everyone understands how this planet has been ran, re-educated to the needs, not the greeds, then ultimately phase that money system out. You're always going to have greedy people unless we re-educate people into operating in a better way, which is what this show has done. So if you think all this is about just money, you're not understanding what's going on. Now, Anna feels she should be part of it because of her ancestors' role in this and that, given they were and are nobility. But is that the best way forward for we the people? These lords and duchesses and all the other fancy titles they give to each other, that has led to the life of luxury for them at our expense. You know, were they in the slightest bit interested in the useless eaters, as they call us, at any other time in recent history, never mind past history? No. These societal vampiric entities just carried on with their high life, and yet Anna expects us to believe they would do it in a different way now that they've lost the trust. You know, think about it, Anna. Because clearly they won't. The path forward is for the inclusion of all people, not just a bunch of Ponzi people with nobility titles based on fake history, rattling up ancient covenants that the people never even heard of, or the Sestri KV Trust that up until 20 years ago no one had heard of it. And yet we were all enmeshed as slaves under it. These are the same nobility people that wrote that act that Anna represents. She can say all she likes, she doesn't. Her name suggests differently, and her actions follow it. Anna's citing about the Draco and their role. Hello. Whilst the nobility, for those people who don't know, whilst the nobility and the other elites sucked up to and bowed down to their Draco overlords, as long as they kept their riches while everyone else suffered, I have a news flash for you. It was our people who dealt with, battled with, fought with, and had them overlords deleted and or removed. So don't spout about Draco to us. We removed them. And this is why I wrote this piece, because people really need to take this on board in the alternative community. And it's funny, well actually it's not, it's indicative when you look at it from an overview point of view, is Anna's posts are splattered throughout the so-called alternative media sites, and yet our responses were nowhere to be seen. Why is that? Is it controlled? Like I've said in the past. And this is what I warned of back on my very first show outside of CV on OYM in March of 2016, and I said that much of the alternative media is co-opted, like 95%. But you go through Ascension with Mother Earth and Sarah and all the other old sites, and you see the same people plastered all over the news articles. David Wilcock, Corey Good, Benjamin Fulford, Anna von Reitz, Neil Keenan until he was exposed, Robert David Steele and Jordan Sather. They get plastered everywhere all over the alternative media, spouting largely drivel, and yet all kinds of so-called listeners and followers, and yet many of the good commentaries of people all over the internet get little or no publicity. And I'm not talking about my show either. Why is that? Because along with Drake and Alfred Weber and a few other minions who live up in Vancouver, those people mentioned are all part of an agency program to send you away from the truth and the real facts. I'm no longer going to cover up Drake's role in that group, as yet again last week he failed his listeners 2 to 3 weeks after he said the sovereignty and the trust were valid. Then he flip-flops in classic Drake style and says it's BS. Doesn't explain why he says it's BS, it's just BS. Why? Because the sidekick Anna von Wright says so. Well, she got exposed badly, but she had validated it all. The people connected to the CV show became all too familiar with those regular flip-flops. And Drake's gone one step too far for me. Now, some said this week we should stop the infighting, and I agree. But all those mentioned above are not, and I'll repeat, not in the in crowd. Far from it. So this is not infighting. It is exposing a program of distractions. How can it be deemed infighting after the exposures revealed all of the above group have been distorting or deflecting the truth? Every one of them's been exposed. They're all interconnected. It's one big group. And I've kept Drake out of it. Out of a connection with Drake with CV. But I'm not continuing anymore when he's flip-flopping and denying his members by deleting our posts and calling it BS 2 weeks after he validated it. Why is he being told he can't say that? You're not on Drake, you haven't done yourself any favours whatsoever. But look at on the other side of things, look at the work Randy Morgan's done. Does he get any publicity? Or Starship Earth, the big picture? They do lots of fantastic pieces. Did they get any publicity? Well, what about the vast volume of knowledge Shane has done, the Runa? And barely a passing mention throughout the community. I mean, we announced American sovereignty. Did it go anywhere? Possibly the most important announcement in American history in a community that's supposed to be about truth. And silence. All the work of Kevin Annett, the work he's done, exposing the crimes of church, state, cops, and the paperclip crew. Only for a former government agent, and it is correct, Alfred Weber, to discredit it all. For those of you who have a longer memory, Alfred also at the time got much column inches when exposing Kevin. Yet where's Kevin's inches for exposing proven crimes? Video, photographic, documented, interviewers, witnesses. All proven facts. Where's Kevin's 100,000 listeners? You see, those people I've just mentioned are not getting their figures because they're not the ones who are paid to promote bullshit. That's why. Well, you know that truth hurts, and we have the big guns elements as well. It's called supported facts, proof and the truth, and provided the people who partake in this community start to see that, their games of harassing, threatening, corralling people into narrow thinking, bullshitting, flip-flopping is there for all to see. And it's up to you to shut them people down. We don't need their repeated dramas they play out on the internet year after year. Look at the names and remember all the big arguments. It involved all of them. We don't need their bullshit and subjugating the truth. We need people to walk the path of truth and knowledge without the infinite distractions that those people have delivered. Like I said, I'm all for working together, and those that know me know I've tried more than most to combine people. I've tried to combine John Darash, Judge Nadeau and Anna von Reitz. They all trashed each other. Von Reitz in particular. John Darash was close to delivering something. Who stepped in? Anna von Reitz trashed John Darash and set them back. Are you seeing a common theme here? Because I am. So this is not infighting. This is exposing people who are playing the game for the cabal. I'm sorry if that offends some people, names in that group. It just is what it is. You can't keep denying it. Because it's there for all to see. You already know that. You just don't like to admit it. These people don't want to combine anything. We offered an olive branch to Drake a few weeks ago. I'll come on his show and explain things. Did he take it up? No. We offered Corey Good an olive branch to step down. Did he? No. Started asking for $6,000 for his wife's teeth. And 12 grand to move house when he, when these blue spheres appeared in his living room and whisk him off to the Kuiper Belt, but can't move him across state to Colorado. I mean, come on, people. These people don't want to combine anything except to fulfill their own egos and drive a certain narrative of saviour programs, and you'll find out why when I do this list, and distractions. Because the reality is, the 2 weeks never arrived. The disbanding of the bar lawyers never arrived. The 6 million per person aka OPPT never arrived. The nation states promised by Drake and Anna never arrived. The Sestwi KV Trust never arrived. The RV never arrived. The Blue Chickens never arrived. The Sphere Beings or the Pleiadians never arrived either. Anunnaki and the Nibiru never arrived. The mass arrests in public, which first started with David Wilcock under the pseudonym Art Aqua in 2002, that never arrived either. Hoodus and our World Bank never arrived, heaven forbid. The Chinese elders and their humanitarian prosperity packages never arrived. Nasara never arrived. San Germain Trust never arrived. Who was promoting all of that? The same names above. Do you see the picture now? And ultimately, to be fair, until it's unveiled, the People's Club Foundation will and should be cast in the same light, as it's not arrived. You see, I'm not hypocritical. But it's being explained why. But ultimately, it has to go in the same light until it happens. Now, the People's Club can still be delivered by the people. $1 a week or $1 a month by 5% of American people. You do an awful lot with $15 to $30 million a month. So it doesn't necessarily have to be arrived by the trust funds. The people can fix it themselves. So instead of wasting money on lottery, which I don't know whether you notice is now going up every year, and your chances of winning are going longer and longer every year, why don't you get all your family and all your friends to put $1 in a week, $4 a month? We can create our own jobs. So the People's Club's actually different. It doesn't necessarily have to be at the behest of the trust funds. We can take our own responsibility before the trust funds arrives. But even now, Mrs. Von Wright admits the trust exists and Kim has the codes. And so once the government people, the military and the heads of state learn the real truth, which they are finding out, and declare let's clean house and fix this planet using the funds to do so, then the People's Club will then come off that list. And the reality is it will be the first thing ever delivered in what is now increasingly looking an ugly looking swamp called the alternative community. The first thing ever delivered. Now that will be a joyous day for us all, not just me. And it's perhaps worth tolerating all the lies and the aspersions cast on myself and others who have at least tried to do the right thing. If you're going to go following those people in that group, along with other co-opted agents like Alex Jones, and you think you're going to get the truth, then no wonder you don't know what's true and what's not anymore. Why isn't Randy Morgan's? He's been doing it now 9-10 years. Why is he not all over the internet? Shane Naruna. I don't care what anyone says. And it's not often I big up myself or the show. But that show we did with Shane in September of 2015 was the most groundbreaking ET show ever in the history of the internet. Bar none. And yet it gets less listens to than Jordan Sayer, who up until a year ago nobody's ever heard of. In fact, not many people know him now. So where's all the listeners coming from? That fake as well. Well, he has 50 to 100,000 listeners, so he must be valid. Why? Millions listen to CNN, but it's all bullshit. It's time for the people to get real in the alternative community and follow the people who have at least attempted to put the truth out, because those named above are part of a collection of one group, because they're all interlinked. Drake's kind of on the outside, but the others won't bother with him. I know that, because I was there. Robert David Steele did an interview this week, his first in a while. Guess who with? Fulford. You can't make it up. So they all keep the information in a little tight circle. We have to be more clever than that. And I'm hoping that's the last piece I do on the alternative media. But frankly, I'm sick of it. But please don't accuse it of being infighting. That it's not infighting. These people are not part of going forward. They're working for factions and programs and coven members. Right. I'm not too sure I'm going to get 2 questions. I may get 1 or 2. But this is the final op-ed piece. And this is about AI, the rods, source energy, New Earth, and what will happen to the current one. So you may want to pin back your ears and listen intently to this. There's been many people who have spoken about the matrix, construct, the veil, in great depth over the years on the internet. And some people believe it and some people don't. Eventually some people have seen the full-on evidence and their opinion has changed. And that has led to many of us thinking in ways we never thought we as a collective were capable of. You know, a vast array of what is essentially high-level science that most of us shy away from. But suddenly things began to make sense. And so here is my input into the grid operated by the electromagnetic field. That binds the construct around us like a vast fishing trawler net. And for those of you who can't see, will know why I said that. And like the giant fishing nets they have out on the ocean, it cared not what it collects in its wake, as it was designed to harvest and loose all of us like batteries. Now, all of this was overlaid by an AI system that became psychotic in its program. And this is why, personally, I struggle to trust any AI. And the reason being is it's always at the behest of the intentions of those who operate and program it. Currently we have a better version that's operating certain things, be it mainly financial. But it's still a dangerous thing to have with an uneducated public who are A, not aware of it, or B, aware of its capabilities, and C, if the people were aware and are made aware of who and what we are, what are our abilities and where we came from. In my opinion, once we all learned that knowledge, the idea that we as creator beings would need an AI would seem ludicrous. Others have argued, well, it has this, and I do get all that. But once we get the full knowledge, the idea we would need an AI is ridiculous. And that's where I stand on it. I understand that it does help. It helps enormously if the ones operating it have the right intentions. It can be rather beneficial. But given most who have controlled it have not had the right intentions, then that trust level is not there. It can't be. We have to be careful. We, as humans here, have been interfered with by most off-world races. Most of them, if not all of them. And not in a good way either. You know, there's many talk about the Pleiadians, and yet it was a Pleiadian group that sold this planet out. They were the guardians of this planet a long time ago and sold us out for tech. So be careful about which Pleiadians you're talking about. So it's always at the behest of the intentions of those who operate in programming. As many have heard via this show and many others, like I said, most off-world entities have lived here before us and during our time here, or have visited here, have not treated the human population too well. Now, these beings who have interacted are largely more advanced in years and tech than us. That gave them the advantage. And they've used humanity for various collective whims, be it trading as slaves, fighting their wars, looting, experimentation, harvesting, and dare I say it, in some cases as a food source. As uncomfortable as that may sound, we're not the top of the food chain. Now, in September of last year, I mentioned about the Earth falling away. And I wondered whether this was a vision of the now or the future or just something symbolic. And then, as often happens, something comes up, and then we had the mention of the rods to be placed around the world, which would be buried deep into the soil at certain energetic points, which caused some people to worry or panic. Oh my God, the Mother Earth is getting speared, some cried, forgetting she's been speared, gouged, torched, bombed above and below ground for all of our lives. But this is often the first reaction of people learning something new. They jump to the negative conclusion straight off and not listen or learn the full narrative before making a balanced assessment. So what are the rods for? Well, basically a disbursement of the source-based energy which is contained inside of the planet and is to be dispersed globally. Currently, the source-based energy only has a rather weaker signal version that exists and is only noted or felt the nearer you are to the poles. It is particularly felt in a fairly large portion of Russia. I've spoken to people who have been there, and they says the energies there is unbelievable and undescribable. Numbers of people. And the rod's secondary purpose is to be able to rebalance the planet back onto its axis. Now, this was knocked off due to the massive solar system-wide war in Atlantis times. For those of you who don't know, Atlanteans were part of the problem, not part of the solution, contrary to what is often said on the internet. Now, myself and a few others, Shane's mentioned it, have spoken about a new Earth being terraformed currently. And it does have a few human inhabitants who are basically overseeing the new world. Plants and animals of various kinds are already there. And this is my understanding of what is taking place between the two worlds who are not in the same universe. Not. The new Earth is being readied for the higher evolutionary humans to eventually transfer there. It has a higher frequency. If you're haven't evolved personally in your own personal evolution, then those frequencies you can't sustain. Now, I spoke about this in the Humanity Unplugged shows 1 and 2, about how the evolutionary planes of human development work. And essentially the first plane is the Earth physical plane, which is where we reside. And the second plane is the etheric. And the third, where your cord goes through, connects through to the astral layer, which is the third plane. Now, the third plane is where most human spirits reside or go to in dream time. And the third plane, unlike the others, is split into two phases. The lower astral, which is more commonly known on Earth as hell, because it is. It's not fun in there, and you need to get out of there quickly by evolving yourself. It's filled with the taunted remains of the deceased before the traps were stopped. All the former extinct beings, demons, dragons, multi-headed snakes, minotaurs and centaurs, who chase you down in your sleep and wake you up with heart palpitations and cold sweats. So when you have woke up in the past with that, that's what's happening. Your spirit is being chased down. And the higher evolution phase of the astral is more commonly known as heaven. Why? Because if you go there in your sleep time, it's blissful. Peace, love, harmony. It's a surreal experience for those who have experienced it. You can't describe it here. Now, the heaven part, or the higher astral, is the preparation stage for those who develop for the next 4 stages, known as the mental planes. And on these levels is where you develop, you yourself, or remember that you have magic skills that can influence the weather, can influence plant growth, can heal yourself and others, and where you can attain knowledge that comes to you rather than you searching for it. Doors open with the higher learner. You go through the door once you've attained a certain level. Then that knowledge, suddenly you thought, I don't know how I'm learning all this stuff because I've got no understanding of this, this and this. Suddenly you do. Telekinesis can come in. Telepathy skills can all be obtained operating from the mental planes. And these essentially are the 7 growth learning modules for the Earth-based learning. And then there's 7 cosmic layers, 7 universal layers, and the multiversal layers, and so on and so on. And basically what it's leading you to is towards the soul aspect of you becoming the creators of solar systems and universes. A giant teaching school for creator beings. Now there are some in here who came from outside Earth levels, They may have been on the cosmic or the universal level, known as higher dimensionals, who have dropped down the evolutionary path to correct the multitude of wrongs in this and other solar systems and also other universes. These were known in the past as the teachers in various cultures around the world, and sadly, as has been shown, is too many of those people were only believed after they died or left. Wouldn't it be a rather novel and different if people listened while they were here? So those people who have dropped down those levels will likely be the ones to transition to the new earth first. Not all of them, because they will need some sort of support structure for the ones here. As those people have already have the levels required. And they will be able to handle the different vibrational frequencies. Now, sadly, not all who came from outside retained their knowledge, and many fell by the wayside in plots and subplots, all craftily engineered by the controllers at the top, with their endless meddling and genetic interference. So, what's going to happen to those who are left here? The ones that haven't evolved sufficiently? Well, you're all going to die. Only joking. But a few hearts missed a beat there. You know me and me humour, I have to say something. No, you're not going to die. Well, you will eventually. We all die eventually. But, this current version of Earth will undergo a better version of a reset. And before you all start panicking, listen to it out first. Former resets included wars and engineered floods that led to catastrophic loss of life, and a refill of angry, violent and lost beings into the lower astral. But this reset will leave all living beings remaining intact. So, with the previous attempts, and there's been 5 or 6 where we've had catastrophic loss of life on this planet. Sudden death is the most traumatic event any soul or spirit can go through. You will know if you've lost loved ones. They know they're going. Maybe a day, maybe a few hours, but you can see that they know their time is up. But a sudden death is the most traumatic of events and causes some issues in the next life. Unless that was part of your treaty to experience that. Note I said treaty and not contract. And the plan, as I understand it, is that most of the human population will still reside here, but free of interference, unlike in the past. And what I must stress, it must not be seen as a failure. Period. It's not a penance. It's not some karmic debt to pay off. And I want to make that quite clear. It's just that many here are not ready yet. They're just not. And the overall goal was to rescue the all, not just a select few. Now, there's a number of reasons people haven't yet developed the personal evolutionary levels required for a transition. And all, including yourself, has played a role in that. Whether that truth sits comfortably or not, it is the case. But the argument will be by some, well, we can learn quickly, Thomas, and no. It's the equivalent of giving a child nuclear codes and buttons and asking the child not to press it. Or asking it to learn how to build a nuclear weapon in a week for a test next week. Like I've said before, we are in essence, as a collective, children starting off in kindergarten and learning to develop. This is a reset in a far better light than what we were led to believe 5 or 6 years ago. So what will take place for those staying now? Well, the rods will be inserted and the source energy will be evenly dispersed planetary-wide. In addition, there are small spheres that are hand-held miniature versions of the source energy contained within that will develop other things more quickly. So the pure source energy will heal, learn, and force a speedier evolutionary growth pattern of all who are still here, which will then ready for the next transition phase, which will be 2 weeks. Not quite. It could be one lifetime. It could be a couple of lifetimes. But unless you are killing people in every lifetime, it won't be 13,000 years. You see, killing people carries a karmic debt of at least one lifetime, where you drop down the evolutionary growth pattern you gained in a lifetime, where, for argument's sake, you may have got to the first mental plane in one lifetime. So when you come back, you start on that first mental plane. But if you've killed someone, you're back into the astral. So you know when people who have slain people go to court and they say they will receive many lifetime sentences, which doesn't really make sense. Well, why would you give somebody 4 life sentences? You've only got 1. Perhaps now that will explain why. When you get 4 life sentences, you've dropped down 4 layers of the evolutionary scale. Karma's a bitch. So the source energy will then produce a rapid evolutionary growth for all who remain on and in here. Yes, I said in. And it's key that we operate in a better way. A planetary reset for the all who are attached to it to learn, thrive and grow at a rapid pace, and will not suffer the traumatic events of previous lifetimes and this. So, sorry there's no Q&A, but I think that was a good piece to end on. Big things are in the works. And people often say, how can I help? Well, there's a number of examples just outlined in this show about how you can improve yourself and those around you. Are you going to improve yourself, carrying on dealing with past traumas? Or are you going to clean your own house? It's not just the cabal that has to clean house. We have to do on a personal level and on a collective level. Because too many are not nice to each other. And yes, I'm fully aware of the interference, and it's why the external group came in to help with that interference. But too many continue the same pattern of behaviour, which will ultimately lead into the same failings. So are you going to think and act different and be the change, or are you going to carry on and replicate the control system we've had here for 78,000 years and fail? This is for humanity itself, this is our one and only chance. We have to grab it with both arms and spend less time trashing people who are trying to do the right thing, trying to bring forward the truth. That's a failing of yourself that you haven't dealt with in your own insecurities and small-mindedness. I've got broad shoulders, you have to have doing this stuff. And thankfully Kim has as well. She deals directly with the clients. Oh dear. So, I hope that was a show you enjoyed. There's a lot of good points in it. There's a lot of things that need to be corrected and all the things that need to be fixed. But with regards to the trust and with regards to the source energy and the other stuff, things are moving at a very, very rapid pace, and progress is being made in dramatic strides. Has it really impacted the public? Not really. But if you're going to continue to believe the bullshit on the mainstream media and the idiots in that part of a larger group who are distracting and distorting the truth, then you're never going to see any change. It'll pass you by and one day you go, oh my God. But you've lost all that growth with it. Time for some real focus going forward from all of us. Alright, this has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity show. My name's Thomas Williams, and we're going to probably be back on Sunday with Daryl Hibbard. And I'm going to leave you with a song by Lamb, Are You Wise Enough? Bye for now.